The words hit Westminster like a thunderbolt at precisely 2:17 p.m. on a grey October afternoon. George Galloway, standing before a packed crowd in Rochdale, delivered the most devastating political speech in modern British history. His target, Prime Minister Keir Starmer. His weapon, explosive allegations of corruption that would shatter the foundations of British democracy forever. Starmer is now widely held in Britain to be screwing the entire country, Galloway roared, his voice carrying across the silent crowd, and he is in an improper relationship with the gay Bangladeshi billionaire Lord Ali. That improper relationship is a financial one. The audience gasped. Cameras clicked furiously. Within minutes, those 28 words would be trending globally, viewed by millions, and threatening to bring down a government that had promised integrity and transparency above all else. This wasn't just political rhetoric. This was political assassination by truth. Because behind Galloway's inflammatory language lay a scandal so deep, so compromising, that it would expose the rotten heart of British democracy itself. The allegations were devastating in their detail. Lord Waheed Ali, a media mogul worth an estimated £200 million, hadn't just donated to Labour's election campaign. He had allegedly purchased access to the most powerful office in Britain through a web of undisclosed gifts, secret accommodations, and financial arrangements that violated every principle of democratic accountability. The evidence was mounting daily. Starmer had accepted £20,000 for accommodation where his 16-year-old son could study peacefully for his GCSE exams. The location? An £18 million penthouse apartment in Covent Garden owned by Lord Ali. But that was just the beginning. Designer clothes for Starmer, expensive spectacles, luxury outfits for his wife Victoria, private accommodation for family members, access to exclusive properties for government meetings, every gift carefully designed to create dependency, obligation, and ultimately influence over the democratically elected leader of Britain. No British Prime Minister has ever allowed a billionaire to buy his clothes, buy his glasses, buy his wife's clothes, put him up in a multi-million-pound penthouse apartment, Galloway thundered. No British Prime Minister has ever had the kind of financial relationship with a billionaire that Keir Starmer has with Lord Ali. The crowd erupted. Social media exploded. Within hours, Galloway Exposes was trending worldwide, with video clips of his speech reaching 14 million views in the first 6 hours alone. But Galloway wasn't finished. His speech continued with surgical precision, dissecting the anatomy of political corruption with the skill of a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Starmer delayed as long as he could, and then beyond that which was acceptable to parliamentary authorities, declaring the depth, and I mean the real depth, of his financial relationship with Lord Ali. Those words contained the seed of constitutional crisis. A serving British Prime Minister had allegedly failed to properly declare financial relationships that could compromise his independence. If true, it wasn't just political embarrassment, it was a fundamental violation of the democratic contract between leader and led. The response from Downing Street was telling in its absence. No immediate denial, no clarification, no explanation, just silence that spoke louder than any statement could. By 4 p.m., that silence had become the story itself. Why wasn't Starmer defending himself? What couldn't he deny? The implications were staggering. Lord Ali wasn't just any wealthy donor. He was a sophisticated media operator with extensive networks across broadcasting, digital platforms, and political communication. Sources suggested his influence extended far beyond financial contributions into the realm of narrative control, shaping how stories were told, which issues gained prominence, and how public opinion was molded. If Galloway's allegations were accurate, Britain's democratic process hadn't just been influenced by money. It had been systematically manipulated by someone who understood that in the modern age, controlling information was more powerful than controlling institutions. The viral TikTok video that broke the internet came from an unexpected source. 19-year-old student Emma Richardson from Manchester. Her shaky phone footage, recorded in her university dorm room, reached 8.3 million viewers within 12 hours. My mum works 3 jobs to pay for my education. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's kid gets a free £18 million penthouse to study in. This isn't politics anymore. This is class warfare. That video crystallized something profound about the scandal. It wasn't just about financial impropriety or parliamentary procedure. It was about fundamental fairness in a country where working families struggled to afford basic necessities, while political elites enjoyed luxury funded by billionaire benefactors. The human stories began pouring in across social media. Parents unable to afford private tutoring for their children's exams, while Starmer's son enjoyed a multi-million-pound study environment. Families living in cramped social housing, while the Prime Minister's family accessed exclusive central London properties. Workers buying clothes from charity shops while their elected leader received designer outfits from wealthy patrons. The contrast was politically toxic and morally devastating. George Galloway had touched a nerve that went far deeper than partisan politics. He had exposed the growing chasm between Britain's ruling class and the people they claimed to represent. Inside Westminster, panic was setting in. Labour MPs who had campaigned on platforms of integrity and transparency were discovering that their leader's relationship with Lord Ali made a mockery of every promise they had made to voters. Many were learning about the extent of these arrangements for the first time through Galloway's public accusations. The WhatsApp groups that connected Labour backbenchers were reportedly in meltdown. Messages leaked to political journalists revealed MPs demanding immediate explanations from the leadership. Some were already calculating the political cost of defending the indefensible. Angela Rayner, Starmer's deputy, was notably absent from the airwaves. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, cancelled scheduled interviews. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, was reportedly furious about being kept in the dark about arrangements that could compromise Britain's international relationships. The Conservative opposition seized on the crisis with devastating effectiveness. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, despite his own party's recent electoral defeat, delivered a statement that would be quoted for years. The British people voted for change. They didn't vote to replace one form of elite capture with another. If these allegations are true, this government is fundamentally compromised from day one. But the most damaging response came from within Starmer's own party. Veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott, a figure of unquestioned integrity within the movement, broke her usual diplomatic silence. Transparency isn't just a campaign slogan. It's the foundation of democratic government. The British people deserve immediate answers about who is influencing their government and how. Those words from Abbott carried special weight. She had survived decades of political warfare, racial abuse, and media attacks while maintaining her principles. When she questioned her own party's leadership on matters of ethics, it sent shockwaves through the labor movement. The international reaction was swift and humiliating. European leaders, who had welcomed Starmer's election as a return to stable governance, were privately expressing concerns about the allegations. France's Emmanuel Macron reportedly cancelled a planned bilateral meeting pending clarification of the scandal. American officials were asking pointed questions about whether Britain's democratic institutions remained reliable partners for international cooperation. If a British Prime Minister could be compromised by foreign money, what did that mean for NATO security, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic confidence? The markets responded with characteristic brutality. Sterling dropped against major currencies as investors questioned political stability. British government bond yields spiked as questions mounted about whether Starmer's administration could survive long enough to implement its economic program. But the real damage was being done to something more precious than currency values or political careers: public faith in democratic institutions themselves. The revelations about Lord Ali's influence weren't just about one scandal. They represented a pattern of elite capture that voters had hoped to escape by supporting Labour's promises of change. Galloway's speech had achieved something remarkable. It had united voters across traditional political divides in shared outrage at a system that seemed designed to serve wealthy insiders rather than ordinary citizens. Conservative voters, Labour supporters, Liberal Democrats, and political independents were finding common ground in their disgust at the apparent corruption of democratic processes. The social media response revealed the depth of public anger. The hashtag #DemocracyForSale generated over 2.3 million posts in 24 hours. Memes contrasting Starmer's luxury accommodations with images of British families struggling with housing costs went viral across every platform. TikTok videos explaining parliamentary declaration requirements to young voters were reaching audiences that traditional political coverage never touched. The most powerful viral content came from ordinary citizens sharing their own experiences. A viral Twitter thread from NHS nurse Sarah Murphy gained 450,000 retweets. "I can't afford to move out of my parents' house at 28 because rent is too expensive. Meanwhile, our PM's teenager gets a free £18 million apartment. How is this the Britain we voted for?" These weren't abstract political arguments. They were personal testimonies of a system that had failed to deliver basic fairness while rewarding those already privileged with even greater advantages. The pressure on Starmer was becoming unbearable. Every hour without a comprehensive response deepened the crisis. His advisors reportedly urged immediate transparency, but legal concerns about ongoing investigations created a paralysis that only fed more speculation about what needed to be hidden. The leaked WhatsApp messages between senior Labour figures painted a picture of complete chaos. One exchange, published by The Times, captured the desperation. "We're bleeding support by the hour. The longer we stay silent, the worse this gets. People think we're hiding something because we are hiding something." Another message revealed the scale of internal recrimination. "We campaigned on integrity. Now we look like every other corrupt politician. George fucking Galloway has destroyed us with one speech." The constitutional implications were profound. If a prime minister's independence could be compromised through undisclosed financial relationships, what did that mean for the separation of powers, democratic accountability, and the rule of law? Legal experts were already preparing challenges. Constitutional lawyer Professor Vernon Bogdanor announced that judicial review proceedings would examine whether Starmer's failure to properly declare potential conflicts of interest violated the constitutional principles that govern democratic leadership. The Attorney General was reportedly seeking urgent legal advice about whether criminal investigations might be warranted. The Electoral Commission confirmed it was reviewing all donations and declarations for potential breaches of financial transparency requirements. But beyond the legal technicalities lay deeper questions about British democracy itself. If elections could be influenced by sophisticated media manipulation funded by unaccountable billionaires, what meaning did democratic choice retain? Galloway's most devastating insight wasn't about money, it was about narrative control. Lord Ali is far more than just a political donor, he had explained. He's a powerful figure in the media, an influencer in policy circles, and reportedly a key strategist behind Labour's messaging. This revelation transformed understanding of the scandal. It wasn't just about financial gifts, it was about the systematic purchase of democratic discourse itself. If Ali's money had helped shape Labour's campaign messages, media strategy, and policy priorities, then voters hadn't just been choosing between political options. They had been selecting from a menu curated by unelected wealth. The investigation that followed Galloway's speech revealed a sophisticated network of influence that extended far beyond simple donations. Think tanks receiving Ali funding while producing research that supported Labour policies, digital platforms amplifying content that favored Labour messaging, grassroots organizations that turned out to be AstroTurf operations funded by Ali's networks. British democracy hadn't just been influenced by foreign money. It had been systematically manipulated by someone who understood that controlling the information environment was more effective than traditional lobbying. The human cost was becoming clear in polling data that showed a catastrophic collapse in public trust. YouGov's emergency survey revealed that 73% of British voters believed their democracy was corrupted by money. Even more damaging, 68% said they had lost faith that elections represent genuine choice rather than manipulation. These weren't just bad numbers for Starmer's government. They represented an existential crisis for democratic legitimacy itself. When citizens stopped believing that elections mattered, the foundation of peaceful governance crumbled. The protest movements that emerged in response to Galloway's revelations reflected this deeper crisis. Demonstrations in London, Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow weren't just anti-Starmer rallies. They were expressions of democratic rage at a system that seemed designed to mock the concept of popular sovereignty. The most powerful image came from a protest outside Parliament, where demonstrators held signs reading "Democracy is not for sale," alongside photographs of families struggling with poverty, while political elites enjoyed luxury funded by billionaire patrons. One sign, carried by retired teacher Mary Williams from Cardiff, captured the mood perfectly. "I taught my students that every vote counts. I was lying to them." That photograph, shared across social media platforms, became the defining image of the crisis. It showed what happened when citizens lost faith not just in individual politicians, but in the democratic system itself. International observers were comparing Britain's situation to other democracies, where money had gradually hollowed out genuine political competition. The Venice Commission, Europe's constitutional watchdog, announced it would review British electoral finance laws for compliance with democratic standards. The United States, despite its own struggles with money and politics, was privately expressing concern about whether Britain remained a reliable democratic partner. Intelligence agencies were reportedly reviewing information-sharing arrangements in light of questions about who actually influenced British government decisions. But the most damaging assessment came from Transparency International, which downgraded Britain's corruption perception score for the first time in over a decade. The organization's statement was devastating. When democratic leaders can be captured by undisclosed financial relationships, the distinction between democracy and plutocracy disappears. As the scandal entered its second week, Starmer finally agreed to address Parliament. His statement, delivered to a packed House of Commons, would be remembered as one of the most humiliating moments in modern British political history. Standing at the dispatch box, Starmer looked diminished, his usual confidence replaced by defensive uncertainty. His prepared statement acknowledged procedural delays in declaring financial arrangements, but insisted that no decisions were influenced by personal considerations. The response was immediate and devastating. Conservative MPs erupted in calls for resignation. Cross-party members demanded detailed disclosure of all financial relationships. Even some Labour backbenchers sat in uncomfortable silence rather than defending their leader. The most damaging moment came during questioning when Conservative MP David Davis asked, "Can the Prime Minister guarantee that Lord Ali received no special access, influence, or consideration in exchange for his financial support?" Starmer's response would be quoted for decades. "The honorable member knows that all political parties engage with supporters and donors within appropriate frameworks." It wasn't an answer. It was an evasion that confirmed everything Galloway had alleged. The Prime Minister couldn't deny that Lord Ali had received special treatment because the denial would be false. The chamber fell silent. MPs from all parties recognized they had witnessed the moment when Starmer's credibility died. He had been given the opportunity to clear the air and instead had chosen legalistic evasion that fooled nobody. The viral clip of that exchange reached 23 million views within 48 hours. The comment sections across platforms were unanimous. Starmer looked guilty because he was guilty. The political earthquake that followed was swift and merciless. 3 junior ministers resigned by the end of the week, citing irreconcilable differences over transparency and accountability. Senior backbenchers began privately discussing leadership challenges. Party members started canceling their memberships in disgust. But the real damage was to British democracy itself. Galloway's speech had achieved something no opposition politician had managed. It had exposed the fundamental corruption of a system where money could purchase not just access, but narrative control over democratic discourse itself. The scandal wasn't ending. It was metastasizing. Every day brought fresh revelations about the extent of Ali's influence network. Every revelation deepened public cynicism about whether elections mattered, when outcomes could be purchased by sophisticated wealth. George Galloway had delivered more than a devastating speech. He had performed democratic surgery, cutting away the facade of integrity to reveal the compromised reality beneath. The patient-minus British democracy was still alive, but the prognosis was uncertain. As the crisis continued to unfold, one question dominated public discourse. If democracy could be bought, was it still democracy at all? Galloway had forced Britain to confront that question. The answer would determine the country's political future. The revolution would be televised. It already was.